The monster with the red eyes stared ahead of him. Its paw with crimson claws dug into the ground. The huge monster opened its mouth and roared at the 3 soldiers who were nearby. They looked at the monster with determination. It attacked them furiously. The monster said, "How dare these mere mortals challenge him?" The ground exploded under the feet of the 3 people. The guy in the blue suit landed on the floor. The asphalt split from his foot. He jumped up with incredible strength and swung his sword. His weapon cut the monster in 2. The guy was smiling with satisfaction, and there was an explosion behind him. The monster fell into fragments. The guy went to the sinkhole. His sword was breaking into pieces. He took a piece out of the pit. The boy received a fragment of the dragon's blood scroll. He held the fragment in his hands with a smile. A message appeared before him asking if he wanted to combine all 9 fragments of the scroll. The fragments spun around him. They were combined. He received congratulations for obtaining the 5-star legendary dragon blood scroll. He held the scroll in his hand. He held it with pleasure. Behind him, a person stabbed him in the back, and the scroll fell out of his hands. It was his sister, who apologized to him and promised to take care of the scroll and Jojo for him. Her name was Mu Chen. The player Zhang Yi was attacked by the critical strike skill of the player Mu Chen and lost 32 million HP. Zhang Yi was lying bloody in a sinkhole. The system informed him that he had no resurrection options left, so he died. Apocalypse, a virtual reality game that involved thousands of top designers around the world, cost 3 trillion yuan and took 5 years to create. Apocalypse is a modern action game that tells the story of the mid-21st century, when alien monsters invaded the Earth through wormholes and attacked humans. The battle between the 2 sides caused serious damage to the ecological environment of the Earth, and all non-human beings living on it were infected and began to mutate. It was impossible to avoid the catastrophe unless you entered the game. All players who do not enter the game will be violently killed by the Apocalypse system and become NPCs in the game world. But after the open beta version of the game was launched, all players who entered the game faced one problem. They could not leave the game and were forced to stay with it forever. It scared the players. They were panicking. But one of them had been in the game for 8 years. And just like that, his best friend and lover betrayed him. He could not accept it. His eyes opened. He jumped out of bed and shouted out why Mu Chen and Jojo had betrayed him. The clock read August 28, 2025. The gates of the Apocalypse world would be opened in 2 hours and 12 minutes. The voice from the clock asked if the players were ready. Zhang Yi held the clock in his hands and was shocked, because at that time, the Apocalypse had not even been introduced. He went to the window and opened the curtains. It was calm outside. Zhang Yi realized that he had returned at a time when the game had not yet been announced. He planned to take revenge on Mu Chen. His fist was clenched with rage. Zhang Yi sat down at his laptop. The most important thing now was to find the divine talent cards that had been scattered before the game started. He Googled about these cards on the internet. In the Apocalypse, the system will randomly give all players talents when they enter the game. Rare divine talents can only be activated by finding a talent card in reality. Sky Fortune, the developer of Apocalypse, released 10 divine talent cards that were randomly scattered around the world. If the location of the cards remained the same, then the closest divine card to him was on the roof of the Jinmao building, the tallest shopping mall in Linhai City. Zhang Yi flew to the city. He ran through the streets and climbed up that building. Zhang Yi was right. The card was indeed there. It levitated on a stand and was golden in color. A man stood behind Zhang Yi. Lu Qingjie said that the entire Jinmao building belonged to him, including the map. Zhang Yi said that the first to arrive had the map. This guy was the owner of the last divine talent card in his former life. Lu Qingjie, the heir to the largest real estate company in Linhai. Several armed men aimed at Zhang Yi. They started shooting. Lu Qingjie threatened him for taking what did not belong to him. The clouds parted. Bullets flew near Zhang. He ran, turning back. Zhang ran to the wall. He jumped down and looked at his watch. It was 5 seconds past 12. Zhang jumped to the map. Lu Qingjie yelled at him not to even think about taking his card. Zhang picked up the map. In his eyes was Lu's reflection. He fired at him. The bullet flew to his head. There was a noise in his eyes. It was 12 o'clock. The bullet was in front of Zhang's eye. Someone's silhouette appeared over the city. A man in a dress and gold jewelry. The game had begun. Zhang had a map in his hands and a choice before his eyes. Did he want to enter the apocalypse? Zhang quickly made his choice. He was swallowed up in a vortex. He dissolved. Player data downloading. People were confused. Everyone was falling apart. Data was being downloaded. People were disappearing from the streets. A figure that appeared over the city ordered us to go to the world that was meant for players. A strange eye appeared. Zhang returned to the apocalypse. He stood in front of the pyramid with the eye. The card was spinning in a magical field. It was a map of divine talent. Zhang walked toward it. He came close and reached out to the card. The feather began to fall. A beautiful flying creature with long blonde hair appeared. Jean finally received the card. His name, his 22-year-old age, and the fact that he was unemployed were on the card. The creature addressed Zhang as player number 8857. She was his unique gaming spirit. The spirit congratulated him on receiving a rare divine talent card for his personal use. Its ability was to copy the talents of other players, with a recharge time of 1 hour. They stood in a circle with 3 colored lights. There were 3 camps to choose from in the game. There was a camp of elves, animals, and humans. They could choose the camp of their choice. Zhang was thinking. In his past life, he had chosen the human camp. Players in the human camp could increase their prestige rating by 20%, and moreover, in the apocalypse, prestige was the most important thing. The spirit had something for Zhang. She held a bundle in her hands. It was a scroll of Drukhon blood. Zhang didn't understand how it got there. He scoffed that the item Muchen wanted would still belong to Zhang. The system detected the dragon blood scroll. The hidden dragon camp was open. This piqued Zhang's interest. He stood in front of the gate and came closer. Zhang touched the entrance with his hand. A bright light came on. He moved to the public transportation. Others appeared around Zhang. He walked past them. It was the same beginning as before. The people around him were excited about the game's design. They couldn't wait to kill monsters. There was a haze in the corridor. Zhang was checking his status. He had a unique ability of the dragon race. Each time he made a normal attack or used a skill, there would be a 1/10 chance of summoning a hell dragon, and all enemies within range would receive 150% of the attack power as damage. Even though the chance is quite low, its effect is almost as good as a divine talent card. Now Zhang wanted to familiarize himself with the card. He wanted to copy someone's skill. The sun was shining brightly. There were fragments everywhere. Someone on the bus had said that with him on the team, he could relax. Zhang's hand reached out to that man. He chose him as his target, grabbed him by the shoulder. The bald guy turned to him and asked him with a pretense if Zhang was looking for a fight. He took his hand away from the innocently scratching the back of his head, apologized, and said he was confused. Zhang managed to copy the epic talent of the treasure hunter. This is the ability to find the nearest treasure chests within a radius of 500 meters. The epic level pleased Zhang. A voice came from the speakers, welcoming everyone to the apocalypse. It was a man with glasses in a room with a microphone. He wished everyone to enjoy the game with all their hearts. And in a suspicious voice, he called everyone his warriors. The bald guy walked confidently to the train window. Zhang's hand quickly blocked his path. He stood in front of the man and told him not to act recklessly, because it was very dangerous outside. The bald man shoved Zhang, called him a coward, because it was just a game to him. He crawled through the broken window and told the others that they could continue to hide and watch him. A moment later, he jumped out of the window. The bald man found himself in the mouth of a mutated spider. Player 13,580 was killed by a huge spider. He had no way to revive. The bald man was lying in front of the computer with headphones on, where the monitor said the game was over. Zhang was sitting in front of the monitor, with a frightened boy next to him. The player was dead. Zhang shouted out that this was no longer just a game. If they died in the game, they would die in reality. It was a battle for life. A flock of spiders were approaching the train. The task was survival. They had to find a safe zone and follow the map to find the 886th safe zone in the 8th district called the City of Hope. There, safety was guaranteed. They had 3 hours and 58 minutes. The reward was the possibility of resurrection, and in case of loss, death awaited. People around them panicked. The girl did not know what to do, because they were surrounded by monsters. The man told her that the only thing left to do was to regain consciousness and attack them head-on. Zhang found an object in the luggage compartment. It was an emergency hammer that had been used as a weapon by someone in Car 7 in Zhang's past life. It turned out to be a blue-quality disguised weapon, so the other players were very jealous. The hammer turned into a sword, just as Zhang expected. It was an ice blade of blue quality. It was made of cold and meteorite iron. What's more, Zhang had unleashed his newly acquired talent that there was a treasure box hidden in the wagon. His vision became X-ray, and he saw the box stand out. Zhang bent under the seat and found the box. There was a blue-quality dragon's breath potion in it. Someone flew out of the carriage and threw the spiders away. It was Zhang, who slashed them with his weapon. His weapon made everyone envious. Even with such a weapon around so many monsters, you have to be careful. The spiders were on the alert. Zhang ran away from them. He climbed up the slope. He took out a potion and opened it. Zhang threw this dragon flame at the spiders. It shattered, and the monsters began to burn with bright fire. It raised Zhang's level, gave him 50 copper coins, and gave him the potion of life. Zhang was delighted and wanted to find some more dragon potions. The people in the wagon were shocked by his quick victory. They did not believe him and thought that Zhang was using cheats. Some of them wanted to form a team with him, because they felt that he was not a novice. Zhang was ready to follow the map to the City of Hope. It was already dark. Zhang walked, looking at the map. Someone was running. Zhang heard it. The man ran closer to Zhang and fell to his knees, begging him to save his daughter, who had been captured by monsters. In Zhang's past life, many players had gotten into trouble in the forest, but there were supposed to be many useful things there. That man's face looked like something demonic. Zhang walked through the dark forest. He was looking for the man's daughter. Zhang turned around and did not realize where the man had gone. He decided to keep walking. He felt something strange in the forest. A little girl was standing with a candy and crying. Zhang approached her and offered to help her, because this place was dangerous. A man and a woman appeared on the horizon and thanked Zhang. He did not understand what was happening. She said that Zhang had brought her another prey. Zhang's task was to rescue the girl from the forest and bring her back to the City of Hope. He had 59 minutes, and the reward was Talia's ring. And in case of failure, nothing. Zhang recalled that in his past life, many people had stumbled upon this hidden quest while exploring the dark forest. Many were happy to take on the task because of the reward and experience. Zhang didn't want to miss this opportunity. He accepted the task. The woman's hands turned into paws with claws. She told the girl to freeze and become her dinner. Zhang told the girl in tears not to run anywhere and to wait for him to sort her out and take her to the village. A sword appeared in his hand. He attacked the woman, whose skin was made of steel. She laughed at his physical attacks against her. Zhang continued his attacks, but it was all in vain. The spirit told Zhang that he was facing a magical spider, a 20th rank boss. She explained that it was better to abandon the task now, because he did not have enough skills to win. Zhang did not want to run away. The spirit hoped he would do the right thing. He refused and angrily went on the attack. As he ran toward the giant spider, he remembered the video about there being a hidden box nearby. There might be a book with a skill that would help him win. Zhang activated the treasure hunter skill. He saw the box. Zhang dodged the spider and slipped past her legs. She realized that she was not the target of his attack. Zhang reached the box and opened it. The spider turned around, and giant spiders attacked. Zhang received a blue item, the same skill book. Row of lightning. The spiders were approaching Zhang while he was taking out the book. It had the ability to release a series of lightning bolts that bounced from enemy to enemy, dealt 200 points of damage, and each attack, when it killed an enemy, increased the damage by 10%. The spider was preparing to attack Zhang. At this time, he touched the book and received an item. Immediately, lightning flew from his hands. Light flew at the spider. Zhang attacked it with his skill and defeated all the enemies. Zhang rejoiced at the reward he received in the form of an epic weapon called the Poison Dagger. It was impregnated with spider venom and could hit an enemy for 20 points of damage. Zhang took the girl's hand and led her home. She thanked him. The beautiful city of Hope was on their horizon. They walked across the bridge past people. One guy behind them asked his boss if he was the one who had stolen his divine talent card. Lu Qingjie got angry and ordered the others to keep an eye on Zhang. There were many calm people in the city of Hope. Among them was Zhang and the girl. She thanked her brother for bringing her home. Zhang received Talia's ring, which increased his luck by 55 points. Zhang held the object in his hands. In the apocalypse, luck is a rare attribute. The better the player's luck, the better the reward for the task. Zhang turned to the noise. The man at the anvil was shouting that he would improve the item for money. There were many people around him. Zhang suspected him of cheating. He didn't understand how the chance of a successful improvement could be so high. It was explained to him that the guy had a talent for forging and refining. He surprised him by forging a strong weapon. Zhang was interested. He touched the blacksmith's hand and copied the epic talent. Now the chance of successfully upgrading his equipment was increased by 50%. Zhang stood next to the forge and held a poison dagger in his hands. He was able to upgrade it to the 15th level. Everyone was shocked, but Zhang was happy, because now he didn't have to worry about upgrading his equipment in the future, and he had a good business opportunity on top of that. Everyone was looking at the epic weapon of the 15th level. People were discussing him and wondering where he could have come from. Zhang began to sweat and breathe heavily. His stamina was very low. He needed to rest at the nearest tavern. He headed there to rest before the new improvements. The tavern was a special place for players to rest after a fight. Zhang sat down at the bar and paid for a single room. He received a key, and behind him, he heard talk about a lucky player on the World Channel who had completed a secret mission in the Dark Forest and received an epic weapon. Zhang believed that luck was also part of the Saida, but he would do his best to balance the two characteristics. Zhang was lying in a tavern room. He was thinking about how he could get to level 20 faster and change his profession. After a player reached level 20, he could change his profession to one of 7 classes. The options included Knight, Berserker, Assassin, Mage, Archer, Priest, and Beast Lord. Zhang couldn't wait to get back at Muchen for his betrayal. The sun came up. The boy was walking through the forest. He looked to the side. He said to stop hiding and come out. It was the same Lu Qingjie. He came out and told Zhang that he had been lucky the last time, but it was not certain that he would be able to do it again. There was a whole camp of people behind Zhang. They were looking at each other, and meanwhile, the computer's force mode was imposed, and all the players turned red. Zhang confidently decided to use a series of lightning bolts on those bullies, but nothing worked. A sign appeared above Zhang. He didn't understand what was happening and thought that he was under a silence that prevented him from using his skills. Lu Qingjie said that Zhang would not be able to use the skills for 2 minutes, so he asked him to accept his fate. Zhang was hit in the face with the first punch, but he stood there as if nothing had happened. Those guys were shocked that Zhang was not taking damage. His equipment was strong, so the strength of those people was not enough. The man whose card had been stolen called his henchmen losers and went to work himself. Zhang knew that the man's weapon was blue rare and upgraded to the 15th level. Lu Qingjie shot an arrow at Zhang. It was a meteor shower of arrows. They hit, but Zhang remained unharmed. The total number of arrows was more than 100, so Zhang decided to do something. He summoned a hell dragon. A huge dragon appeared over the enemies, who decided to run away. Zhang pointed his hand at them and summoned the flames of the hell dragon. He began to breathe the flames at the enemies, who were trying to run away. Everything stopped. The players disappeared, and so did the dragon. On the floor was a bow that Zhang had picked up. He had gotten the 20th level and equipment thanks to that guy. Zhang now had a level 15 silver moon bow. Its arrows split into hundreds of particles and fell like meteors from the sky. Zhang was congratulated by the system on his 20th level. He needed to go to the main city and find a career change officer so that Zhang could begin the test. The guys who had attacked Zhang were resurrected in the Fountain of Rebirth, because players who had a chance to be reborn appeared there. Zhang approached them and thanked them for their weapons. Lu Qingjie was furious and threatened Zhang, who was already walking away from him. Zhang wished him good luck with that. He was walking through the city, illuminated by the setting sun. Zhang approached a career change officer. He said he wanted to change his profession. The officer stretched out his hand and opened the dungeon. Zhang entered the red teleporter. He found himself in a huge palace. The profession of the patron saint of animals was not popular. Zhang stood next to a man in a robe. He had a bird on his shoulder. Zhang thought that even though patrons could make animals do all the dirty work, it did not negate the difficulty of raising them. Zhang did not want to choose this profession. The reason was that when raising animals, all the resources received are shared between the human and the animal. The resources of the apocalypse are very rare, so in the future, due to a lack of resources, patrons simply will not be able to develop, which makes them the weakest profession. The suitable professions for the dragon race were knights and animal patrons. Knights seemed like a good choice for him. But with his strong start, he became weaker in the later stages of the game. In Zhang's past life, players died because of this. But the patron saint of beasts was unique. Thanks to his divine talent, he could get 10 times more resources than others, and using the dragon race, he could get strong companions and create the perfect team. The man in the robe said that he had been waiting for quite some time. The spirit told him to think carefully about his choice, because the right profession would make life easier. Zhang chose the profession of a patron saint of animals. The man in the robe touched Zhang's forehead with his finger. He had chosen his profession. His body began to absorb new energy. People were walking in the Square of Hope. A stranger congratulated Zhang on his successful choice. 2 guys passed by Zhang and discussed their bad experience in the City of Dead Spirits. Zhang heard this and remembered that it was his first dungeon. With the experience of his former life and a properly assembled team, killing the boss would not be a problem for him. The people nearby shouted that they were looking for players in Dead Spirit City who had reached level 20 and changed professions. They had 2 seats available. A girl in a robe approached them and asked to join their team. They gladly accepted her. Zhang ran up and asked to join them as well. The man was thinking that since he was a patron saint of animals who had just changed his profession, he was probably just an ordinary magician with no skills. But they still needed one more person, so he decided to take Zhang to the team. They were walking through the city of dead spirits. It was drizzling. The commander turned to Zhang and asked if he had watched the news on the World Channel. It said that the patron saint of beasts had the least damage of all. Zhang said that he had made this choice because he liked to raise animals. The girl in the robe turned up her nose at the answer. Suddenly, a spear began to fly at them. It landed at the feet of the team. The commander warned everyone that the enemies were coming. They were followed by crypts. They were armed. The commander smashed the bones of one skeleton. He gave the order that he was leaving the ranged monsters to the others. The new girl took up a weapon. She used a fireball. She crushed several enemies with it. A skeleton came up behind her and put a knife to her throat. Zhang entered the fray. Zhang summoned a flock of crows. This is a basic skill of the patron saint of beasts. He used it to summon deadly crows to distract his opponent and deal 50 magic damage. Zhang stood back while his crows distracted the skeletons. The new girl thanked Zhang. He grabbed her hand. They began to run away. Zhang said that these monsters would soon be reborn, so they had to go faster. The team finished the fight and continued to move forward. Everyone reached the castle. The boss was inside. Their tactic was for the knight to charge the boss and take the hit, while the others would deal damage from the back and dodge the boss's magic effect radius in the second stage. The commander asked how Zhang knew all this. He thought the guy had already been there. But Zhang joked that it was just experience in online games. The team members noticed an item of epic rarity. The commander was surprised that an ordinary beginner could have a level 15 poison dagger and such knowledge of dungeons. He was sure that Zhang was lying. The commander realized that he had a lot of good stuff, and this time, they would make a big profit. Zhang entered the castle. The team followed him in. Zhang asked everyone to stay close together. The trio smiled demonically. The door closed from the outside. Zhang and the new girl remained in the castle. They shouted from behind the door that they would be back soon. The girl angrily yelled at them that they were on the same team. Zhang realized that they were in the wrong company, which wanted to take all the experience and reward for themselves after the boss dealt with them. The boss showed up. An ice crystal flew at the pair. Zhang grabbed the girl's hand and covered her. She thanked him for saving her again. The boss was approaching. It was a level 30 zombie archmage. The monster was preparing a new attack. Zhang realized that without the tank, they would not be able to withstand the boss's attack. The girl cast a seal and summoned the warriors. She said that they appeared thanks to her soul summoning talent, but they would not last long, and they had to think about what to do. Soul summoning is a divine talent card. She summoned the dead creatures that were fighting on their side. The effect was only for 5 minutes, and the recharge was 24 hours. Zhang said he only needed a little time. He summoned a series of lightning bolts. The guy knew his boss's weakness, so he asked the girl not to worry. She was preparing to cover Zhang during his attack. The girl sprouted a multiple fireball. On the other side of the archmage's neck was a gem that was the source of his energy, but also his weakness. Zhang summoned a flock of crows. The archmage was distracted. Zhang approached him and hit the stone around the monster's neck. The monster's head fell off. Zhang landed on the floor. They defeated the archmage, and Zhang reached the 25th level. He received a staff of scattered light of epic rarity. His skill was called Ice Wind Scream. It formed a blizzard that froze the opponent within 100 meters for 5 Senkudas and dealt 500 magic damage. The recharge time was 1 hour. They both rejoiced at this lucky drop with a 2% chance. Zhang handed the staff to his partner. The girl was surprised. He said that it was a weapon for mages, which is necessary for the patron saint of beasts. Besides, they survived thanks to her talent. Outside, the traders heard that the fight in the castle was over. One of them said that the boss had probably already finished off the two of them. The commander happily announced that it was time to go get their trophies. Zhang kicked open the door, to which the lowlifes were reaching. They were surprised that they were still alive. Zhang asked them if they were upset that they did not see a corpse in their place. The commander slashed his sword and told his men not to be afraid, because he was sure that the two were already tired. The traitors went to attack the victors. Zhang stood in front of the girl with a new staff. The commander swung his sword while Zhang stood in front of his accomplice with his arms open. He wondered why they had betrayed their comrades. The commander's sword of grief kissed Zhang's forehead. He grabbed his girlfriend's hand, copying her talent for soul summoning. A flash formed between their hands, which puzzled the commander. He used it to revive the Archmage's soul. Zhang threw this monster at those traitors. They were shocked. The traitors froze and disappeared. Players Wang Hao, Du Wei, and Sui were attacked by the Archmage's soul. The system found that they had no chance of revival, so they died. Zhang suddenly began to fall. He fell to the floor, and his henchmen came up to him. The player's endurance had reached a minimum. He needed to rest urgently. His eyes started to go dark. Zhang could barely see the girl. He was in second place in the ranking. In the room, a young boy was sitting on the couch, telling his father that he was bored with those games and wanted something new. The father replied that if the boy beat him, he would buy him a new game. The boy was excited to win first place. The man took the Book of God Hunters from the table. The father walked down the endless corridor. The boy shouted after him that he was stuck in a game and would probably not be able to play a new one. Zhang was in a tavern room. He woke up with a headache and no idea how long he had slept. He poured himself a drink and saw a letter on the table. He sat down to read it. It was a letter from his partner Han Yero. She thanked him for saving her and wrote that if Zhang was reading this, she had probably already gone to find her older brother. The letter also said that the storage ring contained all the things of those people that might be useful, and that she would hope to see them again. Zhang held the ring in his hand with a smile and clenched it into a fist. The inventory appeared in front of Zhang, and he suspected that those guys had killed a lot of players because there was plenty of stuff. As he sipped his drink, he realized that he didn't have to worry about equipment anymore, and that all he had to do was find the beast. Zhang opened the map and looked at it. He remembered that there was a hidden dungeon in the north, the Tomb of the Dragon Crown. It was the only dungeon where beasts could be found up to level 40. He had to choose his teammates wisely, so that it wouldn't be like with Wang Hao. Zhang went out into the city. He thought about how difficult it was to find reliable players. Zhang saw players calling for players to join the guild. Zhang realized that this was what he needed. In his past life, he immediately teamed up with Mu Chen and forgot that the guild was the best option for recruiting players. He reached the guild ministry. Inside, he was greeted by a guild manager who gladly offered to help. Zhang said he would like to start a guild. She opened a book and told Zhang to choose a name. He thought that the creator of the game was a deity, and the players were people who challenged the god. Zhang chose the name of the guild, Hunting the Gods. The manager congratulated him on creating the guild and said that he could now invite players to join. The guild level was first, with 1 member. Zhang was already thinking that he would have to hand out leaflets on the street, but he realized that this method was too random. Zhang wanted to go to a place where there would be many experts. He remembered that after the survival mission, the first competition was about to start, and this was the place where there would be many experts. To welcome the arrival of the players, the City of Hope was holding the first one-on-one dueling competition, in which all players who had changed their profession could participate. The winner would receive 100 gold and 1 rare skill. Zhang accepted this mission. He loaded up for the match. There were plenty of people there. An outrageous host welcomed everyone to the first dueling competition. The heavenly arena was a paradise for true fighters. Many players gathered in the arena. Zhang realized that he had been sleeping for quite a while, because many had reached level 30, and he was still at level 25. He wanted to level up as soon as possible. The duel began. The assassin successfully fought the magician, who was not even moving thanks to his equipment. Everyone around him was cheering. The magician stretched out his hand. He used the talent Shadow Prison. It was an exclusive mage skill that paralyzed the enemy and dealt shadow damage. The duration of the paralysis and damage depended on the skill level, which was the first level of that player. The assassin was curious how much money the magician needed to give up. He offered him a bribe after the competition. The magician stood there scoffing at the offer. The magician remembered himself in the past, when his company went bankrupt. Back then, he could have used the million the assassin was offering him. He was depressed then. He was sitting on the couch amidst bottles of beer and looking at a child's drawing. He was thinking about his wife and daughter. At that time, he was forced to enter the apocalypse. But now, he was never ready to give up. There was no room for failure or defeat in his new life. The player Wu Qi defeated the player Zhang Yi and advanced to the next round. Ming shouted to everyone to watch out. He was very impressed with Zhang. The next opponent was Duan Feng. The random selection for the first round was complete. The system asked you to go to the appropriate site at the approved time. Duan Feng was Zhang's opponent. In his past life, he often saw this name on the World Channel. Duan could complete many difficult dungeons without assistance. Zhang wanted to recruit him. They were invited to playground number 20. Zhang pressed and got there. Duan Feng was already waiting for his opponent, so he invited Zhang to start. He was a knight at the 35th level. This worried Zhang a bit, who thought his opponent was some kind of maniac. The duel began. Zhang had 2,000 health, Duan had 2,500. Since Zhang was a lower level, Feng let him attack first, so it wouldn't look weird. He urged him to start the attack. Zhang told him to go down to the ground, because the winner and the loser were still unknown. He used the summoning of a flock of crows. Duan took out his weapon and expressed respect for his opponent for his confidence. He used the sword guard. It was an exclusive knight skill that summoned multiple sword spirits. Each of them can withstand 500 damage and has the ability to reflect. The number of swords increased with leveling up. The player Zhang Yi was hit by the skill's reflected damage and suffered -200 health. The fact that Duan said to strike first turned out to be a trap. He mockingly asked Zhang if he was afraid to fight. Zhang thought that if he wanted to hurt him, he would have to break through 4 sword souls, each of which could take 500 points of damage. This meant that he had to take 2,000 reflected damage. But that was all of his health. Duan continued the attack and said that hesitation only gives the opponent the opportunity to kill. Zhang was thinking about how to get rid of the enemy's swords. He remembered the updated inventory with the zombie armor. It allowed him not to die when he received a fatal blow and restored 10% of his health. The recharge time was 24 hours. Zhang used the armor and relied on it alone. He used a series of lightning bolts. Duan mocked that Zhang would die before he could even hit him. He waved his sword and said it was over. The armor worked. Player Zhang Yi used the zombie armor skill. Duan was shocked that Zhang Yi didn't die from the reflected blow. Duan Feng's player received a critical hit from Zhang's poison dagger and was -2,500 health. Zhang said that he was right, because it was really the end. Zhang Yi defeated player Duan Feng and successfully advanced to the next round. He shook hands with his opponent and explained the reason for his victory. Zhang invited him to join his guild, getting Duan interested in dungeons. He got up and realized that he had made a mistake when he underestimated his opponent's chili. He asked for some time to think about the offer to join the guild. The host congratulated those who passed the first round and offered to watch the next round on the global channel. Zhang's former henchman Han Yiru appeared on the stage. The audience was talking about her and her good skills. They exchanged a few words with the opponent and began the battle. In the heavenly arena, everyone was rushing to watch the battle for the title of the strongest magician. Zhang thought about recruiting that magician. Duan said that he was going to practice for a while, and asked him to write to the guild chat if he needed help. Zhang agreed to go with that insensitive grind machine. He received a notification about the guild's newest addition. Duan was hoping for a notification that Zhang Yi had become a champion, so that he wouldn't feel like he lost for nothing. Zhang was happy to have such pressure from the teammates. He went to see the strongest players. Zhang walked into the crowd, and was surprised to see Han Yuru, and that braggart Wu Qi in the arena. The girl was standing with a staff. The battle began. The first attack was an icy wind. Wu Qi said that the staff would soon be his. She told him to speak only if he survived. She launched a level 4 meteor shower. Wangyan meteors flew at the icy Wu Qi. Each of them could deal 500 units of fire damage, and the number of meteors increased with each level. The audience began to get frustrated with Wu Qi and marveled at Han Yuru's strength. Zhang had a bad feeling, despite the fact that at first glance, Han Yuru had won. Wu Qi looked too happy. The meteors were landing. A strong wind blew. Wu Qi disappeared, and a whirlwind rose in the arena. No one understood where Wu Qi had disappeared to. Zhang had never seen such a skill, and did not understand what had happened to Han Yuru. Wu Qi was holding a staff. Han Yuru was lying on the floor. Wu Qi said that if it weren't for him, she would have easily reached the final. The players around them felt sorry for Han Yuru. Zhang approached her, and she apologized for not protecting his gift. Zhang assured her that everything was fine, and decided to reach the final on his own. Player Zhang Yi defeated player Chen Feng and moved on. The player Wu Qi defeated the player Qin Log and advanced as well. Zhang also defeated the girl Ring of Fire. After many rounds, there are 2 players left who will compete for the champion title. Wu Qi and Zhang Yi will face off in the same arena. Many people gathered around the arena, discussing Zhang and waiting for the battle. They stood opposite each other. Wu Qi laughed at the sight of Zhang. He, in turn, said that he hated those who took other people's things the most. The duel began. Wu Qi banged his staff. The players began to make noise that the duelists had disappeared again and didn't want to look at this air. They were in the space of nothingness. Zhang realized why Han Yuru had disappeared. Wu Qi creates a separate space. It was a legendary talent that created a virtual space where the creator increased their damage by 30% and the opponent's damage was reduced by 30%. It lasted for 5 minutes. Wu Qi was confident that no one could defeat him in this space, and the chance for revival was being absorbed. He offered a leniency if Zhang would admit defeat. But he went on the attack. Zhang realized that he couldn't copy the talent, and challenging the crows was useless. The player Zhang Yi was damaged by a shadow arrow, and he received minus 700 points of health. Zhang realized that if this continued, he would die, but he would be revived in the same space. A smile appeared on his face. Zhang took his dagger and stabbed himself. Wu Qi was shocked. Player Zhang Yi had been fatally injured and died. The player had a chance to be revived, so he was revived in the same space. The special area didn't work according to the rules of the competition, so the player could respawn at the place of his death without visiting the fountain. Zhang used the soul summoning skill. Wu Qi tensed up. Zhang Yi cloned himself and said that even if he lost the chance to be reborn, Wu Qi would not get away with it. The crows, who hated him, flew at Wu Qi, and he fought them off. Zhang asked if Wu was ready. He started attacking Wu while he was fighting off the crows. Wu Qi felt a change, that Zhang was too fast. The player attacked the opponent from both sides using the double skill row of lightning. Wu Qi flew away. But he was not going to lose again. Player Wu Qi received minus 800 health units from the double row of lightning. He put his fingers to the ground and shouted that there was no way he was going to lose. A dagger flew behind Zhang. It was approaching his back. Zhang's spirit ran over and covered his back. The spirit disappeared, saving Zhang. The fight continued. Zhang gathered his strength and continued to attack his opponent. He struck him, driving Wu's head into the ground. A bright light arose. Zhang was splitting space. The player Zhang Yi defeated the player Wu Ziam and won the title of champion. A whirlwind rose in the arena. Zhang stood over Wu Qi with his staff. The spectators around him again saw nothing and discussed that Wu Qi had gotten what he deserved. The host approached the winner and raised his hand, proclaiming Zhang the champion of the competition. Everyone expressed surprise that the patron saint of beasts could become the champion. There was a spark between Zhang and Han Yuru. The girl was happy that he had done it. Zhang was presented with a reward, and when he opened the box, he would receive a random piece of historical rarity equipment. Zhang was happy to replace the level 20 dagger he had lost. He started to open the chest. Zhang received the sword of ice and flame. The wind rose in the arena. Zhang held the new weapons in his hands. He thought that he had used the chance to be reborn for a good reason. Zhang told the defeated Wu Qi not to think of doing anything just because they were in the game. He also advised him to become more decent. Zhang was holding a staff in his hand. He left the arena, where he was met by other players who wanted to be friends with him. Among them was Han. Zhang returned the staff to her and asked her about her brother, whom she wanted to find. She smiled and agreed. Han Yuru joined the guild. Zhang was surprised to see a ton of applications to join his guild. Zhang took Han's hand. They ran away from the crowd of players who wanted to join the guild. The two ran to the square in the City of Hope. They took a breather. There had never been so many people running after them. Zhang realized that the guild seats weren't rubber, and that they needed to add players wisely. They lacked a hitter, although with Duan Feng and Han Yuru, they could pass the Dragon Crown tomb. There were 10 spots available in the first level guild, and each level increased the limit by 5. Zhang glanced to the side. He immediately came to Han's defense when he saw a player on the horizon. Zhang menacingly asked who he was and what he wanted. Han was surprised. She knew it was Qin Long and asked him what he was doing here and where her older brother was. Qin Long bowed and said that he had decided to follow Han when he saw her. He explained that her brother was busy with something important and left Qin to protect Han. She explained to Zhang that the player was a friend of her older brother. Zhang calmed down and told Qin about their plans to go to the tomb. He agreed to go with him. At the entrance to the Dragon Crown tomb, Duan Feng was standing there, praising Zhang's progress in such a short period of time. Zhang noticed Duan's good mood. They decided to go to the dungeon together. There were people hiding behind the rocks who were watching the team and wanted to inform their boss and pull people to the entrance of the dungeon. The team walked along the corridor. Han Yuru was fascinated by the statues that stood along the way and looked as if they were real. She looked at a statue. Its eyes began to glow and dirt fell off its armor. Han jumped back. Zhang warned that these were the main monsters of Danju. He ordered Duan to be the tank and the others to cover him. The team had to stay close to each other. The fight began. The monster swung his sword. Duan confidently assured that these metal ones would not be enough to kill him. He took up his weapon. Feng repelled the monster's attack. With flames in his eyes, he wished his opponent dead and attacked him. Other team members fought off other monsters, covering Duan. A level 35 Dragon Blood Knight appeared on the horizon. He was on a horse and carrying a sword. He glanced at the players, pulled on his harness, and rode toward them. Duan looked up when he saw the knight. Qin Long saved Duan by using the sword defense skill. Duan took out his weapon and began to use the skill. The second level sword vortex. It was an exclusive knight skill that caused a whirlwind that dealt 3,000 physical damage to everyone within a radius. The knight and his horse flew up. The knight was awakening Lord Shigyur. Meanwhile, on the Tower of Eternity, the master and the secretary were talking. He was watching the team fight. The secretary noticed that he was clearly interested in Zhang. The master confirmed and said that Zhang reminded him of an old friend of his who was already dead. He recalled how he had thrown him off a cliff. Out of curiosity, the master raised the difficulty for them. The greedy dragon Shigura swallowed the power of his dead subordinates and became a second-ranked dragon. This surprised Zhang. But it meant that the monster egg that would fall out of the boss would be better. The player's health would decrease at a critical rate because of its flames. Qin said that at this rate, they would all die. Zhang ordered them to split up, run as far as possible, and do everything they could to avoid being attacked by the dragon. He told Duan to use the defense of the sword. The knight raised his sword. The attack continued. The team dodged the dragon. But the sword's defense could not withstand such a huge damage. Duan said that in the next fire breath of the dragon, the shield would not hold. Zhang said to leave it to him. The dragon flew away, its breath running out. Zhang ordered Qin Long to shoot arrows at the dragon's weak point, its eyes. Qin used a 4th level skill. The soporific arrow was an archer's exclusive skill. It fired an arrow with a sleeping pill that silenced the target for 4 seconds. The first arrow hit the dragon. The target fell. There was time to attack the dragon together, when it was in a weakened position that could take 100% more damage. The team prepared to attack. Han used the Ice Wind Scream. Zhang changed his attribute and struck with his new dragon sword. The fight was over. The team killed the second-ranked greedy crown dragon, Shiguri. A greed breastplate, a greed sword, and greed daggers, and an egg fell out of it. Zhang was excited about this loot. The team was ready to take a closer look at the reward. Zhang told them to take all the equipment, because he only wanted the egg. Other players burst into the dungeon. They were going to kill Zhang. Qin flew up to cover him. He took the hit for him. Zhang was touched by this sacrifice for him. Qin Long said that it was his duty to save Han Yero. He said he had a chance of resurrection, so he would wait for them in the city and ask Zhang to protect Han. The trio asked what they wanted from them. It was Wu Qi again who came out and reminded them that he had promised revenge. That day had come. Duan was already pulling out his weapon. Zhang was shocked to see him again and asked him not to help him. He wanted to pay him back personally. Zhang cut his hand. His blood flowed to the ground. The egg bled and summoned a dragon. It was a rare beast of the apocalypse. Zhang wanted to make a contract with it. He joined his hand and the dragon's paw. A little dragon hatched from the egg. It amazed the trio with its grace. The rivals were also frozen by the sweetness of the dragon. Wu Qi and the others laughed at the baby and said that they could crush it with their hands. The little dragon was angry. Wu continued to laugh at him. The beast blew fire from its mouth at the players. Their health instantly dropped to 0. The dragon burned the bullies. The survivor could not understand how he had inflicted so much damage. The opponents disappeared from the dungeon. Zhang approached the dragon. He put it on his shoulder and suggested that the others return. Han was furious at the situation. Zhang remembered the symbols on their equipment. He suspected that they were people from another camp or race, but he didn't understand what they had forgotten in the dungeons. Zhang continued to wonder what the sign could mean. They reached the evening city. Qin Long stood waving to them. When he saw the dragon, he melted. He reached out to the baby, but it got angry and blew fire. The monster had a rather complicated character. Due to the fact that the players of Zone 886 killed the greedy crown dragon, Shirguru, in a secret dungeon, the world boss, the Golden Skeleton King, will appear in the City of Hope earlier. Players were warned to get ready. This surprised Zhang, because it had never happened in his previous life. A green hurricane blew up in the sky. The dragon hid in Zhang's costume in fear. Han appreciated this spectacular appearance and wondered how strong the king was. Zhang realized that he was very strong. He remembered how in his past life he had destroyed half of the City of Hope alone, killing 60% of the players. But the new City of the Apocalypse will open only after killing the Golden Skeleton King. And there, Zhang will be able to find Mu Chen. A player brought 2 eggs to another. One did not understand why one more was missing. It appeared to him that in the 886th zone they had met the patron saint of beasts, who had killed a dragon before them and made a contract. This surprised the man, and he let the boy who brought the eggs go. The man closed the door. In his room, there were many dragon eggs. The world boss Golden Skeleton King has arrived. The system asked players to defend the City of Hope. He apologized to Shigeru and promised to avenge him. The king's crown flew up. There was an explosion. The skeletons were on the attack. All the players were shocked that a level 50 boss had gotten to them so early. Some were glad that he could drop good equipment, and some hated those who brought the boss to the city. The mission was to defend the City of Hope. Players had to stop the Golden Skeleton King from attacking the city. The 3 players who dealt the most damage to the king would receive a reward. They would get a lot of experience, gold, and legendary equipment. The penalty for losing was the death of all players in Zone 886. Zhang recalled that everything was just like in his past life. But now he had to act faster. He ordered the team not to panic. The Skeleton King was moving slowly, and all they had to do was keep a distance of 100 meters and use ranged attacks. They stood in front of the king, and Zhang said that they would kill the boss if everyone listened to the instructions. They started the attack. Duan Feng should attract mobs, and the others go for the boss. They were approaching the king. The Golden Skeleton King ordered the soldiers to destroy those players. The offensive began. They cut off the heads of the skeletons. A skeleton attacked a girl who was treating her wounded friend. Zhang explained that it was very dangerous outside the city, and it was better to return to the city, saving the girl and her friend. She turned back to Zhang, who was on his way to the king. The pack of monsters continued to advance. Zhang warned everyone to be careful with the groups of skeletons, and asked Duan Feng to break them. Duan accepted. He took out his sword and used the shadow swirl. He smashed the skeletons' heads apart. 2 men in robes whispered that if he continued like this, all the reward would go to the god hunters. One of them looked at Zhang and told his henchmen to contact the other guild leaders. He didn't want Zhang and his team to take all the rewards. Behind Zhang were people preparing a fireball. They directed it against Zhang. He turned around and asked what they were doing. The man in the robe said that they had come to collect the World Boss Award. Another bunch of greedy idiots who thought they could defeat the Skeleton King. They even got in the way instead of helping. Zhang said that he didn't have time for them, so let them prove by force that they were worthy of the reward. The boss laughed at the people and said he would send them all to hell by jumping on them with a sword. The players hid behind a golden shield from the Skeleton King's attack. Zhang did not understand what had happened. The girl he helped was nearby. She said that she saw the lack of a hitter in Zhang's team and came to help. Zhang thanked her. Qin shouted at Han to move away. Her foot was stuck in the ground. The Golden King was standing in front of her. Zhang also shouted a warning. The boss approached Han Yero and said that there was no point in resisting and that the only way out was death. The boss took a swing at Han, but the elder brother repelled the boss's attack and ordered Han to run. The boss laughed at his intentions to knock him out, because he was the king of death here, who had not even begun to use his full power yet. He excitedly asked him to show him how strong a king of death could be. The boy jumped up and began to attack. He damaged the king and reduced his health by 5,000. The boy expected him to be strong. The Golden Skeleton King laughed at his blows, which were ticklish for him. The guy asked him not to be overconfident at the beginning. He activated the Berserker state. He shouted at him to take his blood and give him great strength. The Berserker state was an exclusive combat form that reduced health by 1% every second and increased damage by 10% in return. He jumped up and called out to watch. The guy activated the Berserker's dissection. The boss's health was reduced by 1,000 to 3.5. The golden skeleton king fell down. The boy looked at his boss and asked if he still felt ticklish. The king was furious. He swung his weapon, resenting the miserable mortal and preparing to take revenge on him. The boy took the blow with dignity. Their fight was fierce. The other players were watching. Zhang realized that the guy was hoping to lose health to become stronger, but his health was at a minimum, so any mistake could result in death. The boss attacked the boy from above. There was a lot of dust and wind. He had only 1 HP left. He used the divine talent of the immortal body. Therefore, the guy survived the strike of the golden skeleton king's hell sword. The boss didn't understand how it was possible, but the guy laughed and asked him to continue, even though the fire tickled him. The immortal body was a divine talent card that, once activated, made the holder invulnerable for 60 seconds, and the recharge time was 24 hours. The boss was screaming in convulsions. All the king's blows missed the guy. Zhang was surprised that he alone could resist the world boss. The boy stood concentrating. The skeleton sword was approaching the boy, but he easily stopped it, and he continued his turn of attacks. He flew towards the boss with an incredible thirst for victory. The guy took down an incredible amount of health units of the boss, who now had no head. He deactivated the berserker state. The sun was setting behind the slope. The guy was holding a level 40 zombie ring of legendary rarity, which increased his stats by 10 points. And the skill offered was the power of death, which helped to increase the ring's attribute by 50% after each kill of the player. Zhang thought that such equipment in the wrong hands could cause a lot of trouble. He approached the guy who helped him and thanked him. But he said he only helped for Haryero's sake. Zhang turned to the girl. Han ran to her brother and fell into his arms, asking him where he had been. Zhang was shocked that it was the same older brother. The boy calmed his sister down and gave her a ring to the zombie. Haryeru was smiling. The system gave a notification that the players of Zone 886 had successfully defended the City of Hope from the attack of the world boss Golden Skeleton King. This opened up a new city for them, the Demon Tower. The brother invited everyone to take their rewards, and said it was time to leave this place. The girl took the golden belt. Duan took the golden soul armor, and Qin chose the golden zombie bow. Han took the golden cloak. And Zhang had level 40 golden boots that increased all characteristics by 5 points. They gave the golden speed skill, which increased speed by 100% and lasted for 20 seconds, and the recharge time took 3 minutes. He really liked the reward. And now, after opening the city, Zhang was one step closer to Muchen. They entered the Demon Tower city. The city was sinking. The team compared the City of Hope and the new city like heaven and earth. The Demon Tower looked like something not easy and scary. There were 100 floors in the Demon Tower, and only those who could pass them would be able to reach the Ion Tower. In his past life, Zhang could only go through 50 floors. The monsters in the Demon Tower were very dangerous, but the reward was worth it. And the higher the floor, the better the reward. They looked at Ion with curiosity. On the top floor of Ion, there was a man standing next to a panoramic window. With a serious face, he said that the real game would begin right now. Next to them walked a team of men who were hurrying to the Demon Tower, which was to close in a few hours. Zhang invited everyone to walk up a few floors. Coincidentally, they were in an open tower that opens its doors once every 7 days. Zhang, with a dragon on his shoulder, hugged his brother Han and suggested that they go see the tower together. This was the moment when he copied the divine talent of the immortal body. They walked along the path and discussed the tower. It was a single dungeon. They had to split up for the duration of the dungeon, so they agreed to meet at the entrance later. Duan Feng went first. As soon as he found a place to fight and level up, he left. The team prepared to go in as well. On the first level, Han fought a slug and successfully passed it. On the third floor, they fought a werewolf, which was also successful for everyone. Zheng killed a boar and passed the 5th floor. He received the boots and gloves of a wild boar. Zhang also reached the 40th level. He felt the ease of passing the floors. On the 7th floor, Zhang found the monsters too easy, and he threw them into 1 and 2. Another monster came out of a dark archway. He did not realize what mediocrity had touched him during his lunch break. It was a 55th level sun warrior of the demon race. The spirit explained to Zhang that he was the commander who led the demons during the invasion of the city. And after the failed invasion, he was locked in a demon tower. Zhang had 3 minutes. He stood in front of his son, a warrior, and was shocked because he was the boss of the 15th floor. The battle began. The monster was clearly unhappy that he had missed his lunch because of the boy. Zhang used the demon dragon's breath and set fire to the warrior, who didn't feel the fire. Zhang realized that it was better not to mess with this boss for now. Sun Warrior swung his weapon. He hit Zhang, and he began to bleed. A notification came up that the demon tower would close in 10 seconds, so progress would be lost. Zhang had minimal health and didn't understand why that bastard had become so strong. Fortunately, Zhang was already leaving the place. The boy and the dragon were provoking the monster. It got angry and took a swing at Zhang. Time was running out. The warrior's son struck, but did not have time. Zhang promised him to come back in a week and crush the warrior's son into dust. Zhang and the dragon appeared in the city. He realized that the monsters were still dangerous, and if the tower hadn't been closed, they would have died. Han Yuru was worried about her brother, who hadn't returned due to strange circumstances. Xin Long and Zhang came over to calm her down. They said that he might have gone on business. Han Yuru was sad. She had a special mission for the players. Guild War is a city of origins. In order to establish interaction between the guilds, the first battle of the guilds took place in the city of origins. Any large guild could participate, and the reward was a teleportation device. Han Yuru said this was the first time she had heard of such a device. Zhang said it was one of the best apocalypse items. Although it did not help in the battle, you could put it in a good place, do nothing and collect taxes for its use, and become rich. He also thought it would help him get to Muchen faster. Zhang suggested that everyone take a break. In 4 hours, they would go to the Guild War. Zhang approached the girl and Qin. He asked them if they had any plans and offered to join his guild. The girl happily agreed, and Qin said that he had to protect Han, so he was joining as well. Zhang and the dragon said goodbye to them. The player Qin Long and Xiaoyao joined Zhang's guild. Now all positions were taken. Zhang was confident of winning the Guild War. On the 8th floor of the Demon Tower was Hannah's brother. He didn't understand why he was still there if the countdown had long since ended. He saw someone in the darkness and told the stranger to come out. A masked man with a sword in his hand came out and told him that he had better not come.